Hey guys, I wanted to do a quick posture clinic for downward dog. So the cues or the, start over. Hey guys, I wanted to do a quick posture clinic for downward dog. So the things that I mentioned for the upper body in the downward dog posture are going to be applicable to any posture where you're bearing weight in your upper body. So you can include plank poses, either on your hands or even on your elbows. You can include handstands. You can include even side planks where you're bearing weight in one hand. So think of the cues that I'll give for the shoulders can be applied to any weight-bearing posture in the shoulders. And then we'll give some cues for the lower body as well in your downward dog. So when you're coming into your downward dog posture, if you start from table pose, usually you can say about one handprint forward from the shoulders. This is obviously going to vary for every person's body. One handprint forward from the shoulders, curl your toes, lift your hips up and back into downward dog. So a lot of times you will find people who are newer or who are really tight in their hamstrings or just not comfortable with the downward dog pose will kind of round out through their spine. And you'll find a bend in their knees, or they're favoring trying to straighten their spine or favoring trying to straighten their legs. And if there's a lot of tension in the hamstrings, if there's a lot of tightness in the hamstrings, if they're trying to favor straightening their legs, their spine is going to curl. If they're trying to favor straightening their spine, then there'll be a deeper bend in your knees. I usually would suggest to put a bend in people's knees instead of trying to straighten their legs, especially if they have tight hamstrings, because you can always feel a hamstring stretch in the backs of your legs, even when your knees are bent, if you tip your tailbone up away from the backs of your knees. So even if my knees are really, really bent here and my hamstrings are looser than most beginner yogis, if my tailbone is curled under, this is going to shorten my hamstring muscles. So I'm not going to feel the stretch. If I start to work, even with my knees bent, so my knees aren't moving at all, if I start to work to tip my tailbone up, even higher, as high as it can go, my spine is going to be flat in this posture, and I'm starting to create that pull in my hamstrings. So you'll always be able to find a hamstring stretch even if your knees are bent. So I usually cue to people who are like really hunched and rounded over to lengthen their spine, lift their tailbone up, put a bend in their knees. As for your heels coming down to the floor, doesn't matter. A lot of people are not going to be able to let their heels touch the floor. Don't encourage people to favor walking their feet forward so their heels touch the floor, because typically that'll just round out their spine in the posture. And however, that walking your feet closer in takes less weight on your upper body. So if people are dealing with a shoulder injury, that is a good modification. Or if they struggle with some upper body strength that they're building up towards, that's a good modification as well. But for the legs itself, not so much. So if people are worried about getting their heels down towards the floor, it doesn't matter. Just have them stay where they're at and actively try to drive their heels down towards the floor, whether they touch or not. Again, like I said, walking your feet in does shift more weight into the lower body and less weight into the upper body. So if there's a challenge to bear weight on the upper body, then that can be an option for people as well. Now moving on to the shoulder portion. Like I mentioned, any of these cues are going to be applicable to any weight-bearing upper body posture, including plank pose. So when you're in your downward dog, what you want to do, and in any weight-bearing posture on your arms, what you want to do is you want to bring your shoulder into joints. So the head of your humerus, the top of your arm bone, is going to want to come closer in towards your body. And so in order to do that, there's a few ways that you can cue to activate all of the rotator cuff muscles in your shoulders. So you can cue drawing the shoulder blades down the back and in towards the middle of the spine,
creating a Y shape with your arms. So that Y, that crux of the Y, comes right down to your mid-spine.
So that cues to draw the arms inward at a diagonal. So that will draw the head of the humerus closer in towards the body and down in towards the body as well.
And then from there, now that's kind of like the shoulder blades drawn together, but it's not. So if you had cued to draw the shoulder blades together, then usually people would squeeze their shoulder blades together like so. People would squeeze their shoulder blades together like so. Instead, it's coming down the back. So it draws the head of the humerus in a little bit more towards the shoulder socket and down your back. And then we want to activate the muscles that protract our shoulder blades by spreading our shoulder blades apart from there. So there's still, our shoulder blades are still drawing down our back, but then they're spreading apart. And you can cue that by pressing down into the floor. And when you push down into the floor, that will spread your shoulder blades apart.
It's a little more noticeable in a plank pose. When your arms are not overhead, they're straight out in front of you. So here's me kind of sinking into my shoulder girdle, push and spread my shoulder blades apart, and then you can see that big difference. And my shoulder blades are coming down my back as well. And another thing that you can cue in your downward dog as well is to hug your inner arms in towards each other, activating your adductors, activating your pecs as well.
So in your downward dog, shoulder blades draw down towards the middle of your spine at the center of your back. So they're drawing down and creating a Y shape with your arms. And then push into your hands and feel the shoulder blades spread apart and widen like wings as they draw down your back. Then squeeze your inner arms towards each other to activate through your biceps, to activate through your pecs, and to find strength and stability in your downward dog posture. And then even broaden through your clavicles as well to let your heart become wide and open.
So those are some cues that you can use in your downward dog pose. You'll see a lot of different downward dogs, and we are going to be able to talk about this a little bit more when we meet each other and when we can kind of assess each other's downward dogs. But kind of play around with your own downward dog and see what happens when you move your body in different ways, when you squeeze your shoulder blades together or when you spread them apart, when you broaden your chest or when you round it in, when you externally rotate through your arms, when you internally rotate through your arms. It's important to practice that and to experience the different sensations that you feel in your body when that happens, and see what muscles are moving and see what happens when you do a certain movement, what the ripple effect is throughout the rest of your body. And look at your lower body too as well in your downward dog. Notice your spine, the length of your spine, especially in your lumbar spine, which way your tailbone is pointing. Does it point up, back, down? Are your knees bent? Are your legs straight? What's the distance between your feet and your arms? Again, like I said, the closer that your feet are to your upper body, the less intense the downward dog pose is. The farther away, obviously, is going to be the opposite. That's going to take more weight to bear on your shoulders and might be a little more challenging for people. So it's something you might want to notice as well when you're teaching your downward dog posture. So, and if you guys have any questions, just give me a shout. I just thought I'd touch base and keep you guys in the loop and try to keep the momentum going even throughout this kind of coronavirus crisis. So thanks so much, guys.